This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Wellth Talks brought to you by Atlantic Wealth Management. And we have a very, very special treat in store for you, not only today, but over the next few weeks, because I'm delighted to say we have the legend himself and author, Dermot McConkey, joining us in studio today. Dermot, you're very welcome to the West of Ireland.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great to be here.
Dermot is a driving force behind his own development and training company, and he has over 40 years experience. He's been working for 52 years. He's 74 years of age. He plays five-a-side football twice a week. He's a legend. He's had plenty of ups and downs in life, which he will be talking to us about. He's been praised nationally. He's working with all the big financial institutions. The likes of Gavin Duffy sings his praises, Ivan Yates. He is embedded in Irish society. He is a wealth of information, and he is just the guy at the epicenter when companies need to make big changes and need direction, need motivation. Honestly, this is going to be powerful conversations that you're going to be listening to over the next few weeks. Dermot, thank you so much for coming all the way down. You could have just gone online and done a Zoom with us, but we really appreciate that you actually came to our studio here in Galway to meet us today.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to hearing myself speak after that.
And just to give a heads up as well, Dermot's book, Sales ASAP, will be available as part of a competition. So tune in to our social media channels where we will be giving away a number of copies of his book. So, and there's loads. It's one of these books where you can pick it up, any chapter, flick through anywhere. You don't need to read it from the start chronologically all the way through the end. It is a Bible of information for you in business, in negotiation, in communication, in sales, in everything. And it could be yours. So do keep an eye on our social media channels. We'll be giving you more information about your opportunity on getting a copy of this book over the coming weeks. But let's get into today's episode. And Niall, I mean, you know of Dermot for so many years, how legendary he is. And again, it's funny because we talk about retirement planning and wealth management. And as I said there at the outset, you're 74 years of age, Dermot, but you're still working.
I've said it 3 times.
No, but we have this thing of, 65, 67. I want to know what gets this man out of bed in the morning and going into like all the major banking institutions in the country, and still he's gold dust to them.
Yeah.
So it's great that you have the purpose to go out there and continue doing what you're doing. But you're in that area, you're in that field, you know how highly regarded Dermot is.
Absolutely.
And why even.
Absolutely, Gary. What an introduction. I never got an introduction like that.
Wait until you're 74.
I think it's just brilliant to have him here with us in the studio. Dermot, thanks a million. And this was on foot of a conversation that we had over the Christmas. So Dermot, you'll know that over the last 12 months, Wellth Talks is around the 4 pillars of health, wealth, business and family. It's something we're very passionate about in Atlantic Wealth and GK and Schmocked. And we've had wonderful conversations with a lot of people all over the country. And it was interesting. The feedback there over the last couple of months has been, we've had George Kinder, the godfather of lifestyle financial planning, with us twice. We've had Dan Haylett in from the UK, who has revolutionised how people think about retirement, that, the days of working from 20 to 60, 65 and then maybe dying shortly thereafter have changed. But the one big ask from all of our listeners has been, wouldn't it be brilliant? Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be really empowering to have somebody that has had the front seat, the inside line, working with some of Ireland's greatest for, now 50 years. I first met Dermot in 1998. I was coming out of adolescence. I'd spent cut my cloth working 3 summers in Irish Permanent, and started then as a financial planner. And Dermot was brought in by Irish Life and Permanent at the time to coach and mentor and talk to us about what not to do and how to do it. And I mean, it was much less about the transaction and more about listening to your client, understanding your client. I mean, Dermot, you've had a massive influence on not just my career, but the career of so many planners all over the country. And good financial planning, when it's done right, changes lives. So it was great. I reached out to Dermot there in recent weeks, and just delighted to have you here. And I think we're going to have 3 really brilliant conversations. So today,
I don't know if my head will fit out the door after that.
I just think poor Dermot hasn't even had a chance to talk yet.
I still have to put the bin out at home. I remember the first time I got a fancy title, I was executive marketing, whatever. And my wife said, well, look, you'll still be putting the bin out here and changing the nappy. So, look, the biggest thing I suppose Niall and I have spoken about in the last couple of months is there's 3 things that people really struggle with financially, and they live too long, they die too soon, or they get ill in between. And there's a financial consequence of that. And I've always said to people, don't tell them what your title is in your job. Say what you do. It's much more meaningful to people. So if I said I'm a divisional head of marketing, that means nothing to you. If I said I help you promote your products so more people will see them or experience them, your chances are you're going to get people interested in you. So how could people live too long? They could outlive their pension by 10 or 15 years. And if that was, let's say, 50 grand a year, that's $500,000. Where's that $500,000 going to come from? So that's where people like Niall, they need to talk to. And the earlier you do, the better. You know, I was looking back at my notes yesterday, and I was looking, I remember meeting a guy in the UK, and he said, give me your card. And I gave him my card. There was a group of us paddies over from England to get an opportunity to talk to this guy. He was a great pension salesman. And he said, give us your card. And everybody had pension sales consultant, pensions manager. And then he said, look, here's my card. And he took out his card and he had retirement income buyer on it.
Right.
And everybody stopped. He said, now you know what happens when I give my card out. They'd say, what do you mean? He said, I'll buy retirement income for people. When did you last buy some for yourself? And of course, the whole presentation changed then to there being their problem that he would help them solve by buying retirement income rather than the other way around. So one of the things I do as a trainer, and I suppose this is one thing I'd like to get across today, I'm passionate about sales. I know Padraig Mohammed said this a while ago, that Watson and IBM once said nothing happens until something is sold.
Brilliant.
I deal with people who answer the phone, and the biggest gripe I have is they never get sales skills training. Now, they're very courteous on the phone and they can dispatch information on the phone about their products and services. But what they can't do is persuade, influence and negotiate in an ethical way. So we still hear people saying, I don't suppose you'd be interested in, you're happy enough with, you'd never think of, you wouldn't be free next week. We ask reverse negative questions to be proved right, because 9 out of 10 will not be interested the time you ask. But one will. Yeah. And that's why you have to. So people need to be trained and developed to do that. And you spend your life going out talking to people about how they can solve the problem if they live too long, die too soon, or get ill in between. And I know protection is a big part of what you feel very strongly about, Niall.
Well, it's a huge one. I mean, starting with if you like protection. And I remember, Gary, one of our very first episodes 12 months ago, you asked me the question, what is financial planning? And to coin a cliche that we talked about since, for me, Dermot, it's very much about bringing the future back into the present so you can do something about it now. Because, everybody is busy, this badge of honour that we all talk about, and our job is to try as best we can. Number 1, KIS, keep it simple. Number 2, compartmentalise and find out what's important to our clients and beginning with the end in mind, and then reverse engineering everything. So for the best part of 25, 30 years, we've seen a lot of people saying, how much cover do we need? How much can I put into the children's savings plan? How much can I put into my pension? Whereas the real question that Dermot helps answer is, you need to start with, what's the goal? Where are you going? What are you doing? This is what you have. This is what you need. And this is how we're going to get you there. And financial planning without protection is like building on sand. I mean, that's the foundation upon which everything sits. And we've both seen, I suppose, over the course of the last, with 50 and 30 years experience, 80 years seeing what can and sometimes does happen. Somebody dies, somebody gets sick, somebody gets seriously ill, somebody can't work. We always think we have this optimism bias. It'll never happen to me. The ironic thing about protection, everyone wants it, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, but we were talking earlier on this morning how there's elements of protection that we have and we've no problem having them. So, we'll have our car insurance, we'll have our house insurance. Some of us will have health insurance. And as we get older, we realize how important that is because things start not working or functioning as good as they used to. But the idea of protection or insurance for our income or for our children if something happens in terms of our financials, because I suppose your car insurance is compulsory. If you have a mortgage, your house insurance or your mortgage protection is certainly compulsory. We probably just do them. Yeah. But probably what's more important for us long-term wise is having protection and insurance for
Well, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I've professed for years, and this goes back to my days when I was in Aviva, where the general insurance people were to try and encourage people to look at life insurance. And of course, they didn't have an expertise in that area. They got a loan of an expert, like a person like Niall, would come in once a week and give them advice and guidance. And they didn't know how to do it. And basically, my job was to try and, I said, don't look at it on selling. Just ask people, give them the advice. And I'll give you one example. I'm working a lot with credit unions at the moment. And credit unions don't sell, they promote. And I was told that at the beginning. I was also told they don't have customers, they have members. So the bottom line, but yet they need to sell because they don't get any income on return on investment now. So now they have to try and encourage members to come and buy other products. And they're getting more licensed now to give mortgages and stuff like that. But the big thing I try and get across to them was, how are you going to do this? So they say, well, but we don't sell and your book is sales ASAP. So I said to one of the managers, I said, let me come back with a different approach. So I came back with Breaking the Ice with members, and they loved the title of that course. Now, ICE stood for Inform, Communicate and Educate. Now, the staff loved that because that wasn't selling. So all we wanted to do is to inform people what's available, communicate that through phone calls, emails or face-to-face, and educate people on what options are open to them. And they're the critical mass. And I spend my life talking about primacy and recency in phone calls, primacy and recency in emails, primacy and recency in face-to-face.
What's primacy and
primacy and recency is the beginning and end.
I couldn't even pronounce it when I went to repeat the question.
Primacy and recency is the beginning and end. Like, Gary, if I said to you, do you remember the day you met your partner? Now, I'm 55 years with the same woman. I remember the day I met her.
Yeah.
And I remember the last day.
You're still madly in love.
Which was the same as, which was this morning. You remember beginning and end. The first day you went to college, the last day you went to college. I worked for 7 companies. I can remember the day I joined because you feel very awkward. You don't know anybody. And the last day they bring you to a pub and they give you a present. Yeah. So our brains are geared to remember beginning and end. They're the weakest part of most presentations I deal with. People start conversations by talking about their products, their services, and they don't engage the customer at the beginning. At the end, if you don't get commitment to the next stage, and the biggest example I can give of that is, at the end of a sales presentation, someone says, what do you think? So immediately I've told you to think about what I presented to you. So you say, leave it with me and I'll think about it. Instead of saying, if I've done a good presentation, Gary, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to go ahead with this? Now you have to give me a reason why you don't want to go ahead. And if the presentation was good enough, the chances are you'll probably get the sale. So breaking the ice, I think, is better. It more represents what I think is needed today. People need information. They need to be communicated with in a manner that suits them, and they need to be educated on best practice, what's available.
Brilliant.
and can I ask you, Dermot, like, if you bring it back to what you talked about there, protection, why then do people not take action?
I think, well, I'll give you an example. The poor fellow who introduced us when introduced us to the business back in 1976 when I joined Scottish Provident.
You're right.
And a lovely guy, was it?
Yeah.
1976, fellow called Willie Hogg, lovely guy, died at 40 of cancer afterwards, I found out. But when we were starting off, he says, and I'm not great with my Scottish accent, but he says, gentlemen, and there was no ladies, it was mainly gentlemen in the team. There's a lot of great ladies in our business now. But he said, gentlemen, you're going to be selling life policies to people who are alive today and they'll not need one. And you'll have someone that there was no serious illness in those days. It was accident policies. You'll have people who are careful who will not need an accident policy. And you'll have people who are young who will not need a pension. But they will do someday. And that's your job. And I remember going, how am I going to survive in this business? I'm selling things to people that they don't want. I mean, what is a policy? A piece of paper in a plastic bag and a promise. If I go to Harvey Norman and buy a flat screen TV, I have a beautiful flat screen TV to see. If I buy a car, I have a beautiful car to see. But we're talking about things that could happen. And I suppose to answer your question now, the real thing is that people feel there's plenty of time yet. And yet we never know when something happens. And I had a claim for the first time in my life 7 years ago. I got cancer. Okay, I'm old. You get older, these things are going to happen. I had a serious illness policy, and you know this story.
Yeah.
I was 3 months from completing the policy before it would cease. And my wife was looking at the bank statement, 200 a month, said, this is a weekend away for us, 600 quid, it'd be a lovely weekend away. No, I said, no, thank God. The insurance man in me said, no, you never know. And 6 weeks later, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I got a check for 158 grand a week after.
Right.
Now, I was at a stage in life where I probably could have, the kids ended up getting a good bit of it. But at the end of the day, this happens to 30-year-olds. This happens to 35-year-olds. And this can be the difference in having a decent quality of life afterwards and not. So, I think the main reason people kick for touch is they believe they have the time. and none of us know the hour nor the day.
And I think, Gary, it ties in with what we talked about with Pádraig on one of our last episodes in terms of the blind spots that I'm seeing every day. I've spent the last 3 or 4 weeks predominantly on the East Coast in Dublin, and I mean, just having really, really, really important conversations with business owners, around their business, around people are putting, incredible amount of time and work and effort into building brands, building businesses, rearing kids, paying mortgages, employing people, and they get into their 40s and 50s and 60s, and then something happens, and it's protection is only important the day after you need it. And we've all seen. I saw it there firsthand there when Ulster Bank left Ireland, and there was movement between banks and policies lapsing and different things, and then somebody gets sick. So I mean.
And in that environment as well, when people are building a business and there's huge stresses and stuff, that does, we know, have a knock-on effect on the body down the road. Yeah. So all that intensity of work and busyness and so on, you're pretty much lining yourself up where you will need some sort of protection or cover down the road.
I mean, one of the great catch lines was, one of the trainers I had in my early career was, he said, when somebody dies in a family where they have kids, there's 3 deaths. There's the death of the husband and wife, there's the death of the income, and I'm forgetting the third one. The husband, the wife, and the income are the 3 things. The only thing you could replace is the income. Now, you could replace the husband or wife in time, but when you think about it, at a terrible, stressful time for people, who's going to replace the income? Now, as you said, Gary, sometimes people will be covered because there was an assistance with a loan you got that you had to have some cover. But people that generally would, I wished I had more cover when I made the claim. It's too late when it's too late. But having that mindset, I mean, belief that something could happen is a start. And if it frightens you into doing something, great. I had a boss who used to say, I'm never going to apologize for making you more secure in your job. And I often use that afterwards when I was talking to people about financial planning. I'm never going to apologize for making you more secure financially in the event of you living too long, dying too soon, or getting ill in between. And very few people could argue with that. Yeah. And the best story about belief ever that trainers would use is Roger Bannister in 1954 broke the 4-minute mile. Within a year, 7 other people broke the 4-minute mile. And that the only difference was that the other 7 was they knew it could be done.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it was expected that the human heart would burst under that pressure. And now it's a fairly common thing for athletes. So how expectations can change in time.
But even this conversation we were having earlier on, where years ago people expected, when you got to a certain age, you nearly expect, you're waiting to die. Like, we often think years ago.
It's Friday. But Gary says, sorry, can I interject? It's Friday. Like, can we just?
But years ago, you go to the old houses around rural Ireland, and to be sitting by the fireplace, smoking the pipe or the shawl there, and they're just waiting for the Grim Reaper to be knocking on the door. Nearly, it was this expectation of, you've done your work. Yeah. What are you hanging around for? It's time to move on to the next world. Whereas now we're seeing that people are living, and they're living well.
Yeah. We're playing 5-a-side soccer and
pushing us all out. Yeah, well, but isn't that a huge motivation for us of thinking, like Dermot is again in his mid-70s, he's still working away, he's still active, he's survived and gotten over cancer. I mean, like and you had a twisted bowel as well a few years ago.
And kidney stone. So I gave all my business over 3 years to the hospital. Yeah. But you're absolutely so right. I mean, I think I was just saying to the girls outside before we started this podcast that I believe one of the reasons people are living longer is they expect to live longer now.
100%.
The word is out. You're going to live longer.
Correct.
So I think, at the end, you often hear people saying the dad was dying, the daughter's in Australia, it'll take 4 days for her to come home, and he's only given 24 hours to live. And he hangs on. Yeah. And she comes into the room, Dad, I'm here, gives him a kiss on the face, on the head, and suddenly he drops off. Yeah. And they say he hung on for her. Now, physiologically and medically, nobody's ever been able to tell me that it is possible for someone to hang on. And yet I always remember, I don't know if this is true, but years ago there was a guy in Cork told me that this guy had a truck and he was on an incline in his driveway and he was digging something in the garden, working in the garden. And out of the corner of his eye, he got the impression that something was moving. And his daughter, who was 2 or 3 years of age, was playing on the ground in the driveway, and the truck started to move. And he screamed, ran over, got his back behind the truck and managed to keep it up until a neighbour happened to hear his shouts, came out, whisked the daughter out of the way, he rolled out of the way, car went across the road and backed into a wall. And physiologically, they were saying afterwards, how could he have had the strength because he wasn't a terribly well-built individual, but yet to protect his daughter, he had the strength. So the power to achieve is unbelievable. And what I say, the biggest signs of failure I've ever heard in my life are to use the word wish, try, or hope. So you, somebody, you're smoking. Oh, I'm going to hope. Hopefully, I'm going to give them up. I'm going to try and give them up. I wish I could give them up. And then you're back on the cigarettes. Well, I said I'd try. Yeah. So in other words, you excuse defeat in advance. The way you lose weight is to say, I am 12 stone. If you're 15 stone and you want to be 12, I'm 12 stone. I'm not at the moment, but I am 12 stone and I'm working. You tell the truth in advance. And the psychological brain understands that and works towards it. So to go back to your question, Niall, I think, and I know you did this brilliantly with your customers, is to explain to them why it's so important to do it now, to have the belief that you're secure, you're looking after the ones. I mean, most people love their partners and their kid, and they would hate to think of anything, putting them in a difficult situation, bad and all as it would be to have to live without you. In fact, the worst situation is if you get ill, because now you can't earn and they have to look after you as well. So that's why serious illness is so important and income protection is so important. Now, not everybody can afford all these things, I know, but it will never stop someone like Niall Aiden saying, these are the things you need to put on the, and I'll never apologise for making you more secure. You know, people that drink a pint, and what's a pint now? 7 euros?
I don't know. I'm alcohol-free. I'm alcohol-free now.
I don't drink. Excuse me. But if you look at that instead of 1 pint, if I just, instead of having 3 pints a night, if I had 2 pints a night, now that'd be terrible. You deserve your pints if you want to relax. We say 1 pint. So let's say 7. So you do that for a week. That's 50 quid. That's 200 quid a month. You'd buy a lot of cover for that 200
and you get your tax relief. But tying in with what Dermot says, and it goes back to, I know, the purpose, the plan, and the portfolio. The portfolio is all of the tools in the bag, whether it's an income protection or serious illness or life cover. I was listening to News Talk there during the week, and they were just talking around the importance of, you know, protecting what's most important. You know, your biggest asset isn't your house. It isn't your pension. It's your ability to earn income. And if you look at, say, if you look at a household bringing in, we'll just say, hypothetically, 150,000 between the husband and wife, that's 3 to 4 million over a 30-year period. So that we insure a 30, 40, 50,000 euro car, but yet we won't insure our income. So, I mean, going back to financial planning, bringing the future back into the present, first and foremost, number one, protect what you have, because there are so many people that are looking to, I suppose, tax efficiently save for the retirement, which is important, children's education, which is important, but protection is just something that's becoming more and more prevalent as we see stuff happening, and unfortunately people getting sick and stuff. So,
but go back to your conversation. You see, you've been hanging around Dublin too long with your joint income of 150 grand a year. Put it back to the West, we'd say 100 grand, right? But when it comes to retirement, people have been living a certain lifestyle of having an income of 100 grand a year. Now, maybe when they retire, the mortgage is done. Maybe. Now, it depends if they go and buy a second home or something like that. But let's say they've the mortgage paid, the 100 grand. So they may not need an income of 100 grand a year, but they still need some sort of income if they want to keep doing their holidays. They want to have their nice car or something every few years. They want to be able to treat the children or the grandchildren or so on. And as you were saying to me, people actually don't think about, they don't realize that when they finish work, that's the end of their income. Because they're not working anymore, so they don't have an income coming in. There is a state pension. Now, the state pension, as we know, is very minimal. It's to keep people out of poverty. It's not to ensure people can go to Ibiza every month. So people need to think about, actually, what do I want my life to look like after I retire, whatever age that is. If you're, I suppose, in fairness, if you're self-employed, you have your own business, you can push that out. But usually if you're in, public sector, private sector, you got to kind of hang up your coat when you get to your mid-60s. So you don't really have a choice at that stage. You got to just, your income will stop from working. But people, I'm sure you've been working all your life. So what is it that you want to do now that you're not working anymore? All those dreams and aspirate, when I'm stopped working, I'm going to do this and that. So now you can do those things. You don't have the income to do it.
But it goes back to what Dermot is saying. I think of Michael Noon, who I quoted a couple of times. You don't retire from something, you retire to something. So, we're going to talk more on the next episode around tying in with what we've talked to Dan Hillett about, is retirement planning and the importance of it, and knowing what good looks like, because it's, what does outside of good health, what does anyone want? A good lifestyle.
Good lifestyle, yeah.
Protect what you have that umbrella, so that you have income on one hand, you have death on the other. In the event of a death or a serious illness, or you're not being able to work, that's all. Make sure that's copper fastened. Do it all very tax efficiently. have a plan, stick to the plan. But I mean,
so can you talk to me about the types? Because I don't know, right? This is my area of expertise.
yeah,
Talk to me about, so look at me, Gary Kelly, CEO and founder of GK Media Limited. We're 13 years on the go, okay? Nice, solid business based in the west of Ireland. And I'm in my mid-40s, so I'll probably be working for another while yet. But what sort of protection should I be thinking about? I've 2 children, 12 and 7.
yeah.
Married to a formidable Italian woman.
Really?
The mortgage might be paid off in the next 10 to 15 years. So what should I be thinking about in terms of protection for myself?
I'd wind it back to Niall's approach is always to talk about your goals, your ideals, your dreams, and so on. Most people would talk about a fun number. I mean, I'll give an example. I talk a lot about left brain and right brain. Left brain is logic, numbers, details, fact. Right brain is your emotion, it's risk and reward. And the reason why many people, I find, don't convince people or persuade or influence them enough to want to go ahead with something is they're not good at asking the right sort of emotional question. So if I said to you, how concerned would you be if you couldn't go do this or go on your holiday or change the car every year, your wife could change your car? How worried would you be about your children's education? If they weren't good enough to go to college, how would you feel about providing funds for them to start their own business? And through all of those questions, you might identify and say, right, well, I love my daughter, I love my son, whoever it is. I want to make sure that I give them options down the line. So I think every individual is different, but trying to find a goal, the ideal outcome you want. And this is where I talk about when I'm doing training, the sort of language that you use with people. I would say most people who sell, including people in financial services, sell a P.
A P.
A P is
a product, a proposal, a price, a package, a plan, a policy, property. All those things cost money. All those things cost money. And I said at the beginning of a conversation, we should not be talking about Ps. We should be talking about what the P does. And the P gives you choices, options, outcomes, and ideas. They're the things that motivate people. The second point I would say is when people negotiate, I listen to phone calls, thousands of phone calls, look at people in action. And what do I hear at the beginning and end of every presentation? I, we, and our. I'd encourage you to go and look at any unsolicited emails you got and look at every paragraph. And it usually starts with, Gary, I'm writing to you in connection with blah, blah, blah. We at Quizzo Direct pride ourselves on our service. I enclose our brochure. I'll be in touch with you next week. I look forward to talking to you. Now, everything in that conversation is what's in it for the person writing the email. However, if I was considering you, I should be using your name, Gary, or GK Media, or I should be using you or your. So it might start now with, Dear Gary, you as a company director may not have had time to reflect on your needs regarding blah, blah, down the line. Like many others, you're working hard, but often we find that people like you don't have time to reflect on exactly what sort of things they want to happen, and so on and so forth. And your under name needs to come in at the beginning, and that needs to come in at the end. Choices, options, outcomes, and ideas need to come in at the beginning. They need to come in at the end as well. But if people haven't been trained, I get people giving out about their staff. And then I say, what training have they had? I was in a credit union the other day and I said, what training? Now they got product training, systems training, compliance training, but they don't get skills training. And skills is not just something, the gift of the gab. I know I speak fast and people think, my mother always said I had a gift of the gab. But I hope I have sort of a gift of a gab that will interest people. So if you ask more questions of people, and I would generally, if I ever write another book, please anybody listening to this, don't write it, will be time, money, quality and quantity. They're the 4 areas I would ask people to ask questions about. First of all, time. Give you an example. The other day, a guy said, my son is going for a job. Will you give him a bit of a booster? I will, of course, I said. So I told him about TMQQ, time, money, quality and quantity. I said, you're looking for the money, the salary. TQ and Q will get you the job. What have you done with your time up to now? What do you want to do with your time in the future? Your ambition. Quality. What references, degrees, qualifications, experience, people are prepared to vouch for you, have you got to prove you're a quality person? And quantity, what's the range of things you bring to the table? That's why they'll often ask what sport you're into. If the job required someone to be singularly minded, working remotely, which a lot of people are now, they probably play tennis or golf. If they're a team player, they play rugby, soccer, Gaelic, because they're used to the team environment. So they want to find out, have you those skills?
Very good. I used to think people asked me that because they just knew I wasn't working out. But there was a method to the question.
A method.
Yeah. Excellent. But break it down to me, like, because you're throwing out to me different types of protections that is out
to
there.
Answer your question, I mean, and that's absolute gold, Dermot. So if you take case in point, yourself and Kiara and the 2 girls, and everything was going brilliant and you're hale and hearty and good business, great family, putting in your 50, 60-hour weeks, and that's great. And then something happens. So our job, our role in life, our mission in life, very simply, is to ensure that we give you comfort and clarity and peace of mind around if something, for example, were to happen. So, and we try and keep this very simple. Yes, you'll get a financial plan, and yes, cash flow analysis and all of that. But like in its simplest form, first and foremost, life cover is there to provide a lump sum for your dependents and your family and your kids, so that in the unfortunate event of your demise and your income stops coming in, we need to ensure that for, typically until maybe your youngest child gets to the age of 25, that you're able to replace typically, somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of your current level of income. Because typically what will happen, Gary, is your debts will be cleared because they'll be protected. You'll have a mortgage protection policy for those. And then is to have a conversation with you both, just to try and quantify that, if say, for example, you're now dead and gone and your salary stops. So let's just have that conversation. So game over, ball burst. We've given you a good send off. We've gone to Chignoctons and things have settled down. And it's 6 or 8 weeks later, and myself and Dermot might be out just having a conversation with Ciara. What level of your current income would you need to replace?
It's like I was only reminded the other day of a story. When I spoke at about 10 conferences last month, wealth management conferences, and the amount of people, because I'm around a long time in the business, people know me, and the amount of people came up and said, "Oh, you taught me this," and one guy came up and said, "And it worked for me last Wednesday, the thing you taught me." I said, "Oh, what was that?" I said, "You told me years ago that if you're selling to a husband and wife and they say, 'Do you want a cup of tea?' whoever puts the kettle on isn't the decision maker." And he said he went off and put the kettle on and she stayed and wanted more information. Okay. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
But I suppose, look, life cover, it's hard to think about it when you're alive and you don't think
Correct.
you need it. And the two things I always said about income protection and life cover was two things I'd always leave people with if they turned it down. I'd say, first of all, I have to tell you, and I'm obliged to tell you, I can't guarantee to get you this cover this time next year, and it'll never be cheaper than it is today.
Yeah, that's true.
And many of the time, 2 days later, they'd ring you up and say, "Oh, I was thinking about what you said." And it's not to trick people. We're not into that. At the end of the day, it's to encourage people to make sure have some level of cover in place. And hopefully as things get better, that you add to it.
Yeah.
But that's where that formula that Niall would have. At the end of the day, they're the things. Ideally, in the ideal world, we'd have income protection to protect our income. We'd have serious illness cover in case we get seriously ill. We'd have mortgage protection, which I know you're bound to have. But we might need life cover on top of that. And then when you come as a business person, the bottom line, that's a different world altogether. Because how would the business survive without you if you were taken out of the picture for 6 months? And I'm
sure the team would say it survived perfectly.
I could see a lot of smiles outside there.
We wouldn't have to listen to that podcast every week.
It won't be coffee, it'll be Prosecco or champagne. But you're right about the business. And that's that's really live. I'm having that conversation all over the country with clients and businesses, and you're in boardrooms, you're in homes, you're in hotels, and sitting down, partnerships, key people and key businesses generating significant revenue, significant profit, then stuff happens. And so
it's not even just you missing from the picture. The whole business could crumble. That's all the jobs that could be gone as a result as well. And
there's lots of very tax efficient solutions. Today is never about the product. It's never about, that flies in the face of everything we do.
Talk to me about the tax efficient stuff. You're getting me excited now.
But the thing on business was often to say that let's say you and I were in business together and I died and we've no protection in place, ultimately my wife then becomes a director of the company. And she's helping you make decisions about your business.
Wow.
And that often is one that's, and it's nothing personal. Personality that clash. No, I want to be in control of my own business. So if you had to cover as a stroke of a pen, that business could 100% be yours, and then you could take somebody else on. But these are the sort of realities. I know they're doom and gloomy stories for a lot of people, but they need to be had. And it's a bit like one of the things I started to mention earlier on, I usually went off track, was what I introduced in Aviva was a thing called the Tree World Review. And only yesterday, a big brokerage rang me yesterday to speak at their conference next month. And the guy in question, I was very flattered, said, "Oh, remember your Tree World Review." And the Tree World Review that people need, and I would suggest even for your business, Gary, with your clients, would be the Tree World Review. It's what's changed in your world, the clients, what's changed in our world, your business here, and what's changed in the world out there in terms of regulation and compliance. So Niall would have to deal with that all the time. Obviously, the rules and regulations are changing all the time. If we said, what could change in your world? Well, your marital status could change. A lot of people separating now. The days of living with some monster that they couldn't get on with, those days are gone.
Yeah.
And now people have multiple relationships, sometimes kids with different partners. The consequences of all that can be quite considerable. So your health could change, the market could change. There's so many things that can change. And certainly Niall would be able to say, well, there's 3 products available now that weren't available this time last year. So he might need to let you know about that. So a 3-word review would be to have that every year, obviously. And I was trying to encourage people in Aviva that they would set up those meetings with their clients to say, who's doing an annual review with you? Like my accountant will do it with me every year. And there's the interesting one. I'm a right brainer. I just want to know the bottom line.
Yeah.
He's gone through pages of numbers. He's boring the pants off me. I said, some of you out there are doing that.
Yeah.
You've got to find out. And if you listen to the words that people use with you, you would find out whether they're predominantly left brain or right brain. If they're talking about dreams and aspirations and ideas, they're right brain, they want the end result. If they're more detailed organised, they want the numbers, the dates, the times. They want much more specific. Like I would say, do you think my wife's like me? She's nothing like me. Yes, people say, unlikes attract. So I say, oh, right, unlikes attract. So would you be attracted to a dishonest person, Gary? I say, no, of course not. Where you differ is in personality. Your morals, values, principles and beliefs would be identical with your partner. Otherwise, you wouldn't bring kids into the world.
Yeah.
Imagine bringing someone into the world and you totally believe different ways of bringing them up. That wouldn't work. But where you differ is in personality traits. And that's where generally we're attracted to the opposite because they have strengths. My wife would have strengths that I don't have. She would be much more detailed and logical. And her father was an army man, and everything, the shoes were polished like for 5 hours beforehand.
Yeah.
She would be very much like him, detailed, where I'll go with.
Same in our household. I'm the big dreamer. And she's the practical thinker. And it's like, well, why don't you just dream? And she's like, why don't you think practical? But you need that balance then for the household.
I've often said, imagine Billy Connolly doing a sales call on the Pope. And if he was looking for advice, imagine the Pope doing a sales call on Billy Connolly. You'd know without being a psychologist, well, look, you need to adjust your presentation if you want to appeal to the other person.
Yeah.
Their standards, their values, their beliefs will be different. So I suppose that's the biggest thing of all, isn't it, really?
Well, I think it is, and I'm just, having a little bit of humour around what's the subject everyone wants, but no one wants to talk about. I mean, if I think over the last 12 or 18 months, 12 or 15 maybe clients that have come into Atlantic Wealth where they had, say, for example, business protection, and it hadn't been reviewed, and they were paying too much. Some of them didn't have conversion options that they needed. So, like, the importance of the annual review, I can't state as being, it's critical. It's so important because the world changes. Look at everything that's going on. Everyone talking about World War III. At a humanitarian level, there's a lot of stuff going on. So, whether it's protection or retirement planning, or it's really, really, really important that every 6 months you sit down, you circle the wagons. It's a tea, it's a coffee, it's look at the plan. And more often than not, if you have a plan, stick to the plan. But particularly around protection, because health changes, circumstance change, income changes. Lots of things can change. But it's like anything else. The important step is, sitting down.
Well, it's a journey that a plane goes on, and there'll be turbulence, so they have to avoid it or move around it. So adjustments are needed. There's no doubt about it.
But there's ways to be efficient with tax, is it?
Well, there is. For example, with income protection. So if you haven't the benefit of having working with somebody where it's a part of your package, so you get tax relief. So if you're on I'll use your €100,000 analogy, you can protect up to 75% of your income. So if you factor in social welfare benefit, you can protect 75% of that, and you get tax relief at 40% if you're a higher marginal rate taxpayer. So there's incentives there to protect what is your biggest asset. Serious illness cover, as you know, and Dermot found out unfortunately the hard way, but you had it, like a lot of our clients, that's a tax-free lump sum that's paid to you. So, some people say you need a minimum of 2 or maybe 5 times your income. I'd be a little bit less concerned with the amount. The important thing is have the conversation, do a full financial review, understand and appreciate that if you are, heaven forbid, diagnosed with a serious illness, more often than not, it's heart attack for lads, it's cancer, unfortunately, for ladies, or stroke. So serious illness is that tax-free lump sum that just buys you, I suppose, time, peace of mind. Like, what impact did it have in your family, Dermot?
I mean, it's obviously the gas thing is not the gas thing. It's not funny gas, but when you told me that I had cancer, I never heard another word. And I rang him back the next day, and that's how I got into video production. I said to the guy after everything was all over, I said, a lovely guy, Will Robb, brilliant surgeon. And I said, Will, can I do something for you? He said, we don't need training. I said, no, I make videos. I said, what would I need a video for? I said, I presume you have to tell the same people, their families, the same information over and over again. So it was meant to be one video. There's 9 videos on Beaumont Hospital's website now where I interviewed people at different levels. So they were able to say, well, have a look at Jim's video or John's video.
Yeah.
That's this journey you're going to go on. So they're able to use the videos to educate people. But what happened to me, I suppose the argument is obviously what the kids want to know, how long is it going to be, what's the treatment, what does it mean? I'm a lot thinner than I was then. I didn't think I was overweight then, but I had a bit of a football face on me at the time, if you look back in the pictures.
Now you're making me paranoid.
I'm thinner now. But the joy of having the serious illness cover was that you could recover. I remember years ago, Marius Bernard was the guy that did the first ever heart transplant in South Africa. And he had a brother called Marius Bernard. And Marius Bernard made $1 million out of this. Went around the world talking about the benefits of serious illness cover when it came out first. Because what he found was an awful lot of people would recover from heart surgery, but what would kill them would be the stress of not being able to earn an income. And he said he was promoting, there was magic for a lot of the life companies. It brought him over to London, to England. He went around, he was making a fortune speaking at these conferences, talking about how important, and he saw the importance of serious illness cover, that it actually helped people to recover because it reduced the stress they were under by not having cover in place. So it's really an important thing to have in place, no doubt about it, if you can afford it. But I think if you put your mind to it, people say, well, I don't know if I can afford it. Can you afford not to have it? That's the point.
And it's not about fear. It's just about responsibility. It's just about saying, look, we've looked at it. We've had a conversation. We've sat down with a professional to say, quantify where you're at, what you need, put a plan in place, and then it's done. And do you know what? There's peace of mind.
Yeah.
You're talking about, anytime I take a serious illness, I always think about I had a nun. Sometimes on courses, I will ask people, just because it's more communication than sales today. Everybody, years ago when I started off with sales, you had to convince people to buy this and they'd nothing to compare to. Now everyone is a black belt in knowledge through the internet. So it's how do you go about that? But anyway, I had this nun, and as a young fella starting off, the most awkward thing ever was to ask a woman person a medical question, and you had to ask them for the underwriter. So you'd say, have you had any? And then a woman, it was a middle-aged woman, said, I had a few personal problems. And of course then you had to say, well, what were they? And they go, oh, it's none of your business. Like I had a mother who used to go silent when she got to the naughty bits. She could carry on this conversation with the woman next door. I believe she had a terrible. And they could understand one another. Anyway, I had the same situation. I was in my early 20s, was a nun who had inherited her father's farm, and she was bequeathing it to the order, and they wanted a policy on her life. And she put down on the family history that the father died in 1949, cause of death, nothing serious. Now, only in Ireland because you're dying nothing serious. So since that, I've told that story on courses. And these 2 lads from Royal Ivor, I honestly God, it was the funniest thing ever. They were brilliant doing the accents and all this, right? So they used to call, I don't know if you remember, years ago, they used to have these penny policies. You'd call to the door, a burial policy, and they'd collect money off the house every year. Now, I remember my dad had one, I think it was worth £300, and the funeral cost thousands,
All right.
It'd never be enough. But anyway, I thought this guy was saying, I said, I know what you mean. He said, I had to call on a woman once, and I asked, did you have any medical history? Oh, she said, I had a few personal problems. He said, well, what did you have? Oh, she said, why do you need to know that? I said, I have to know about the underwriter. So she said, well, if you must know, I had a hysterical rectum. I think she had a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
You think you set these 2 guys up? The guy beside him said, and I had a woman once who said that this woman had a problem having one of the kids. And he said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What happened? She said, I had to have a sectarian section. I think she had a cesarean section. There's nothing funnier than people, really, with some of the things they come out with.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's all about, Gary? I mean, to your point earlier this morning around, you were asking some really pointed questions around protection in terms of, and that was a conversation we had offline. But I mean, it's great to bring it to life, and it's great to have the conversation, and we're hoping just for our listeners out there that, we're giving them a little bit of comfort around, don't be afraid of it, lean into it.
Yeah. But I think in business as well, because there's someone I know really well who was diagnosed with cancer in their 60s and ended up having to sell their business, and ended up selling it for a song. So sold it for pittance because people knew they had to sell the business. So they had the upper hand when it came to the negotiations.
That's a great point, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gutted for the person because this is a business that they had for over 20 years and they sold it for peanuts, to be honest. And that person has since passed on, and you can even clearly see the effect that has had on the household, because there's nothing there. They had one sort of lifestyle, and that lifestyle isn't there anymore. And I think really, if you are in business, certainly, I mean, you're used to doing cash flows, you're used to seeing what's coming in, what's going out. You need to allocate that you can call it a cost, or you can look at it as an investment in yourself and your business, but you need to kind of create another little row on your Excel sheet to cover yourself in terms of protection, because you can adjust figures, or you can slightly increase costs if needed, so you can be making those payments on a monthly basis. Really, like we do a lot of work around the island of Ireland with people availing of palliative care, people in hospices. We do a lot of stuff with the HSE. We're on the ground, and like, I'm not selling anything here. I've nothing to sell, but I do see people, and sadly, there's more and more younger people, and it's not to exploit that, but there's more and more younger people now that are coming in to avail of such services that we haven't seen when we started doing this work 12 years ago. And I don't know why it's becoming, sadly, a thing where more younger people are availing of needing this specialist care. But look, it's just people need to even have the conversations. It's not kind of pushing it inside and say, "Oh, I'll deal with that at the last minute." Just maybe start opening up to having the conversations now about protection.
That'd be great advice, yeah.
And I'll add to that, Gary. I mean, if you go on to the Financial Planning Standards Board, so there's the Financial Planning Standard Board looks after all the certified financial planners in Ireland. So, and all over the country, there are really, really solid, polished, professional, certified financial planners who will sit down. I'd implore on all of our listeners to seek out a CFP. You look at the Life Insurance Association, the Institute of Bankers, even with the Central Bank, Irish Life. There are so many resources out there. There are so many planners out there that will sit down with you as a family, as a husband, as a wife, as a business owner, to say, well, look, this is really, 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 really important. We talked in a couple of episodes there around the importance of making a will. There's a lot of people who have reached out to us since in terms of looking for recommendations around solicitors. People are looking for, tax advice. They're looking for accountants. But protection sits at that's the foundation upon which everything sits. So the one thing I'd encourage all the listeners to do is to reach out, find a financial planner there that will partner with you, and you'll never be disappointed, because protection is only ever urgent the day after you need it. So don't be one of those people that kind of said, someday that I'm coming from the king of procrastination, but action beats intention. Do it now. And Dermot, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the final thing I suppose I always thought this about protection was, I remember a guy doing a presentation, and a guy on stage, and he was talking about how he'd interview a client. But he said to the guy was a bit skeptical about the whole thing, and he said, "Can I just ask you, you're a very intelligent man. The QE2 is the safest ship built in modern times. Now, all around the QE2, there are lifeboats. Now, what's the chances of the QE2 sinking? Probably very little. So why did I have the lifeboats?" Well, he said, "Just in case." Well, he said, that's what protection is all about. Just in case something goes wrong, you have a safety net. The business didn't work out, as you rightly pointed out, Gary. The markets can change. Suddenly rulings change, legislation changes, something changes. Somebody comes out with a quicker, faster, better one in the technical world. I can do it myself. I don't need you anymore. That could change everything. But if you had a lifeboat there, maybe that will make a difference. So I would encourage everybody to have the 3-word review, just like a medical. I was only talking to a guy yesterday talking about prostate cancer, and he said, "Look, will you do me a favour?" He said, "Any man you meet, will you tell him over 40 years of age, go and get your PSA checked every year? If you get it early enough, wonderful things can happen. They can sort it out." The trouble with, particularly men, women are probably used to being poked and prodded, but God love them for having kids and all they go through. But with men, we tend it's not macho, no, I'll be fine, and to go out and get yourself checked. Well, we'd say exactly the same thing about the financial planning bit. And it's not just about sales, it's about helping people to buy. Look at your options and then decide after that.
Yeah. Brilliant.
It's a noble profession. How do you follow that? Thanks a million, Gary. I hope the
Thanks, Gary.
enjoyed that.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Dermot. Thanks, Niall. And yeah, a lot to take in there, and hopefully that has given you the little nudge that you need to actually look into having those conversations. As Niall said, go for the certified financial planners that are out there. As always, get in touch with Atlantic Wealth Management. The team there will look after you as well. And don't forget about the book, which we have on offer, sales. You call it ASAP.
Yeah.
Dermot's book. We'll have it available in a giveaway via our social media channels, them being Atlantic Wealth Management and Gary Talks. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Wellth Talks. As always, the one thing we always ask of you is if you found the information helpful, please share this episode with someone else you think may also find this episode of benefit to them. And we look forward to you joining us again next week on Wellth Talks.
This is a GK Media podcast.